Hi, this is Ali Arango of Little Guy CGI, and today I would like to show you how to make a whiteboard animation in Blender 2.79. So let's get started. Okay, if this is your first time in Blender, I recommend you go to File, User Preferences, go to Input, and then choose Select with left click. Blender's default select is with right click, and this may confuse you if you're coming from Adobe programs or other 3D programs. Also, while you're in here, click on Add-ons, put a check mark next to 3D View, 3D Navigation, then scroll down. Put a check mark next to Pie Menu, 3D Viewport Pie Menus. Also put a check mark next to Pie Menu, UI Pie Menu Official. Okay, a whiteboard animation is typically what you'll see when a business will be a new startup and they'll need something for marketing. So they'll have a whiteboard animation. You'll kind of see a hand basically drawing out different concepts. So that is pretty much what we're going to be doing here today. To set this up, one of the things we need is we need an image to use. The whiteboard animations, as far as I know, as far as how they're done, the regular ones, you can see an artist very skillfully drawing out in animation. When they draw their lines look very perfect. This way, and a lot of the times when you start with an animation, it's good to start with the end before the beginning. What we're going to do is start with a drawing, and then we're going to use that drawing, and that drawing is going to be the basis for our animation. So from starting with the drawing first, our drawing is already going to look good because we know it looks good. We don't have to be concerned that as we're drawing it out, whether we make mistakes. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that our drawing that we're going to use, or whatever type of image you're going to use, is the size of our render. So this is 1920 by 1080. I'm going to change this up to 100. This is going to be the resolution that our animation will render out at, right? So what we're going to do is, okay, this is our image right here. So I'm going to left click on this image. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to click Open with GIMP. And GIMP is a free open source program that you can download. Just go to gimp.com and you can download this program. It's very similar to Photoshop. Okay, so we have this image here. So when we look at the image, this is 4032 by 3024. We want to make sure that this image is 1920 by 1080. There's multiple ways of doing things in Blender. This is my particular way of doing this. I'm going to click back on GIMP. So what we're going to do is click File, New, and then where we see Width, we're going to set this to 1920, and the height 1080. Then we're going to click OK. So now we have this blank tab right here. However, this tab is the correct resolution. So now we're going to click here. We're going to left click here. We're going to click Edit, and then we're going to select Copy. Now we're going to click on this tab here. This is the tab that has this resolution that we want. You can see the resolution right here. Now we're going to click Edit, Paste Into, and then when we do that, this is our layer panel right here. It says Floating Layer Painted Selection. We can just click this Create New Layer button here, and now our layer is there. So now I'm going to hold Control as well as the middle mouse button and zoom back. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to hold Shift. While holding Shift, press T. And wait a second. Just making sure. Okay. Okay, so for a second. Okay, so this white right here, this is our resolution that we can see. This is our image, which is much bigger, which is fine. It's fine that it's much bigger because we can shrink this. We're going to hold Shift and then press T to shrink this image. So I'm going to hold Control. By holding control, we can constrain our image. I let go of the left mouse button. Now I'm letting go of control. I have this right here. I'm going to select scale. I'm going to click here, go to our select tool. Now I'm just moving this down. I'm going to hold control and then roll my mouse and we can zoom in. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we have two layers. Here's the background layer. I'm going to click on this top layer. I'm going to go to our, this is a ink dropper. This allows you to select colors. I'm going to click this, click the color here. I'm going to click here to make a new layer, transparent layer. I'm going to left click and drag this beneath our current layer, which is here, or beneath our the main image that we want. I'm going to click back on select, and then when I use the eyedropper, I selected this color. So I'm clicked on this transparency layer. I'm going to hold control and then hold the, while holding control, I'm going to press the comma key. And what that did was that filled in our transparent layer that was behind our main layer with our drawing on it. So now the image looks uniform. Okay, so now that we have this image set up with the correct resolution, which is 1920 by 1080, we want to go to File, Export As. We want to make sure we know where our image is going to go to. So I'm just renaming this. Whiteboard animation edited. So this is going to export out as a PNG. That's fine. PNG, JPEG, it's fine. I'm going to click export. Then I'm going to click export again. So now we have that image out of GIMP and in a file that we can now bring into Blender. Okay, now we're going to click on Blender. We're then going to go to our display tab. We're going to select front. We're then going to go to view, align view. Then we're going to select align active camera to view. So we're going to left click on this. Now we can see our camera is basically was positioned to the view that we were already looking at. You want to make sure you have your cube selected. You can tell it's selected because it's highlighted orange. Then you want to press X to bring up your delete menu and then select delete. Okay, with that done, you're going to press the N key. This is our properties panel that popped up when we pressed the N key. You want to put a check mark here next to background images. You want to click this black arrow. Then you want to select add image. When you do that, more space will open up. You want to click open and then go to where that image is that we exported out of GIMP. Here are our images here. We can click here to see them easier. Here's the image that we want. So we're going to left click here. Then we're going to select open image. Okay, this image here is basically going to be our guide. Hopefully you'll see what I mean as we go along. What we want to do now is select the grease pencil tab right here. We're going to select continuous drawing right here. I'm going to hover here, pull this out to the side. And these are our grease pencil options right here. The grease pencil is going to be doing the main work of making the animation for us. Okay, what we want to do now is click on draw. When we do that, we can see more options are now visible to us. See this thickness right here? This is basically the size of our brush. We're going to left click and drag this so that this is the thickness is 10 pixels. Right here is the main color that's going to be what we're drawing. So we want to left click here. We want to take this slider all the way up to white. Now with that done, what we want to do is we're about to click draw again. We're going to start to draw, and Blender is going to remember how we drew this. It's gonna remember, you know, if I start off on this girl, it's gonna remember that I went like this first, and then here, then here, then here. So you want to kind of plan out beforehand how you want your animation to be. What the animation is going to be is we're going to use Blender so that whatever we draw over is going to make basically a white line. That white line is going to reveal what is behind the white line. So once we're through this, you're not going to see this drawing here. You're going to see a blank page, and then basically as we draw, it's going to appear that the drawing is actually being drawn, but in reality what's happening is the drawing is being revealed to us. So I'm going to start here, draw her, draw the computer, and then go here. So I'm going to left click on draw, and what I want to do is kind of think like you're actually drawing, like how you would actually, you know, go about drawing this. And you're left clicking the whole draw, but with that continuous drawing on, you can let go of left click and draw other lines. So I'm just outlining, you know, her face, her eyes, different features of her face. And I'm just trying to cover up the lines that make up this character, while being aware that Blender is going to remember what I'm doing here. So now we'll start on her. Let's go for her hair first. Okay. That's all the lines. So I was like, okay, I won't just stay on her hair. I'll go for her face as well. Face and her hair. Outline of her face. Okay. So her eyes, her facial features. And I recommend that as you're doing this, you get your main lines in. You know, if you miss pieces of the drawing, you can come back, because basically what we want to do is make it look like we are actually drawing this out. I am using a regular mouse and not a Wacom tablet. Okay, so she is drawn in, so now we'll do the computer. Okay. I had wondered how to do this for a while. I would see whiteboard animations. I would see people, you know, saying they needed them. And I said, I bet you Blender could do that very well and do it in a way that is very just a good way to do it that could make it easier to do. Okay, so with these black lines, we're only going to see what our white lines are over, and you'll see. So now let's go for the actual whiteboard. And Blender is going to remember what we're doing here as far as how we drew this out, which is very cool. Takes a certain amount of concentration to use the mouse instead of a Wacom tablet. It's kind of funny because you know, You talk and you do things, and I don't know, your brain, when you can tell when somebody starts to concentrate because it's like, okay, the talking goes away and almost there. And I'm just looking at the little pieces that I thought I had possibly not gotten, because remember, we are only going to see what the white, we're only going to see what the white is over top of. Okay, so once you have your uh, grease pencil drawing over the lines of your drawing or your image, you can click escape to get out of, having that drawing set up for the grease pencil. Okay, one of the reasons why we wanted this image to be 1920 by 1080 was it just makes it easier. This is a guide here. We're going to use this actual image later on, and this, not this image here, this reference that we really can't do too much with this. This is a background image. But because this is set up in the way it is, when we go to do our other work with the image that came out of GIMP, everything will match up correctly. Okay, so now that we have this set up, now what we need to do is we need to change this to a curve. So look right here, see what it says, convert to geometry. What we want to do is click here. We want to select Bezier curve. So I'm going to left click there. Okay, so right here, you can see all of this right here popped up. This is now a curve, and this is, I'm thinking Blender showing us that it knows. However, there's no animation to this yet. However, because this is a curve, we can easily put animation on this. So what we can do is, now that we have this curve here, we don't need the grease pencil line here. So when we look here, when we start drawing a grease pencil line, a layer, Blender starts making a layer. This is the layer right here. So we can either click this eye to make the layer go away, or we can just click right here to actually remove the grease pencil layer. It's fine now that we have this curve. So we're going to click on this curve. And now with the curve clicked on, what we want to do is click here to go to our curve options. Okay, as far as our curve options, the curve is very thin. To be able to see this curve and have the curve actually cover up our lines, curve needs to be thicker. We can do that by looking at this bevel depth right here. We're going to click here and we're going to change this to 0.100. Then press enter. And now you can see this thickness right here. Now we want to click on our material tab. We want to click new. And then we want to select shadeless. I want to click on diffuse and make sure that this color is as white as we can possibly have it. And now with that done, what we want to do is click on our wrench, which takes us to our modifier tab. Then we want to left click here. And what we want to do is select the build modifier. So we're going to left click on the build modifier. Okay, so now that we have the build modifier on here, basically what's going on is when we click play, the build modifier will draw out our curve. So I'm going to click play so you can see this. So basically you can see, there it goes. The build modifier is drawing out our curve. What it's doing is it's drawing out our curve in 100 frames. That's what this length is right here. I'm going to click here to go back to the beginning of our timeline indicator. For the length, let's click here and change this to 250. And what this is this is the default setting of our timeline right here. So this is our timeline. This is our timeline indicator, actually. So our 250 is basically about 10 seconds. So this will take about 10 seconds to draw this out. We can change this however we want it. However, whatever speed we want this to be, which is very nice. We can also select where we want the build modifier to start at. We want this to start at level at frame 1. However, if we change this, we could have this start, wherever we want. We could also, there's multiple options, and some of the videos I've done just recently go over them. But these are the main options that we want to have set for right now. Okay, so with that set up and with all of this set up, what we want to do is click on our render tab button here. We're going to make sure our resolution is set for 100%. And then what we want to do is go to shading. For shading, we want to go to where we see alpha sky. We want to click here and change this to transparent. And now with that done, we are currently set up to render out an animation from Blender from our camera as PNGs. These are separate images, so to do this timeline, to render this out, there will be 250 separate images. The reason why that's a good thing in this circumstance is because these are going to be PNG images. So what's going to happen is each of our images will be a transparent image. Currently, I know of no way to make a transparent video. There's ways to make video quicker when you need it to be transparent, but currently right now, as far as I know, to have the ability to have basically a transparent animation, you want to do it with PNG. So all of this is set up. This is fine for how it is. We need to know where this animation is going to go. We're going to left click here, and then we're going to pick and make sure that we know where our animation is going to. So I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to name this PNG output 1. Press enter. Really doesn't need a name because there's going to be 250 PNG images right here. I'm going to click accept. You definitely want to make sure that you have this going to a folder, because if you don't have it going to a folder, you're going to have 250 separate images that, can definitely cause you some issues if you want to work with those images or get rid of them in a quick way. So make sure you know where your images are going to. And then with that done, I'm going to scroll up here for our display. I'm going to click and change this to new window. All this does is make it so that when we start to render, instead of our render starting to happen here, our render will actually happen in a new window that Blender will open up for us. So now what we're going to do is we're going to select animate. And basically now we can see here's our animation happening now. Okay, now our image is rendered out as 250 PNGs. When I first started doing animations and I would render them out as PNGs, it bothered me. Don't let it bother you. As long as it's in a folder, what's the difference between it being a video file, one movie file, or one folder? Just think of the folder as being like the movie file. As long as it's in the folder, everything's organized, everything is nice. Okay, now that we have those PNGs rendered out, our work here is done as far as animating our curve. So what we can do is, I'm going to click File, New, and then select Reload Startup File. So here's a new version of Blender. What we want to do now is click here. And then I'm going to go to the node editor, and I'm going to left click on the node editor. The node editor is where we can basically set up compositing in Blender. We're going to use Blender's nodes to make it so that when that white curve goes over our drawing, it reveals the drawing rather than covering it up. And you'll see. So here in the node editor, what we want to do is click here, our second option here, our compositing nodes. We then want to select use nodes. When we do that, we see these nodes here pop up. And one thing nice about the node editor is because it's the way you can set it up, you pretty much can remember just by looking at the nodes. A lot of times when there's nodes, I'll draw a quick picture of the nodes to remember them, or I'll take a picture of the nodes. The way we set up the nodes will allow us to get what we need done, which is to have that image be revealed. This renders out the viewport of Blender. We don't need this, so we're going to press X to delete that. This is what we need to get our image out. We need two images, so we're going to, or new two image nodes. So we're going to click Add. We're going to go to Input, and then we're going to select Image. So we have this here. This is going to be our white lines image. I'm going to click Add, Input, select Image. This is going to be our actual drawing here. We need what's called a luminance matte. So we're going to go to Add. Our luminance key. There we go. So we need this. Now we're going to go to Add, Color, Mix. And then we need a viewer node to see what's going on. So with this selected, you can tell this is selected. This is our mix node because it's highlighted orange. We're going to hold Control, and then while holding Control, we're going to press Shift. Okay, so with that done, we have this viewer node here. So this is just another node that we need. Okay, I apologize. I just remembered to turn my screencast keys on. Okay, so what do we need to do here? We need to, this is going to be our white lines. We're going to click Open. And here's our PNG output here. So we're going to click here. We can see all of these images here. What we're going to do is press A to select all of them. Then we're going to select Open Image. And now we have an image sequence here. Okay, so now with that done, we're going to click Open here on this. We're going to click on Images. Let's click right here, these four squares, so we can see what's going on. This is the actual image we're going to be uncovering. So we're going to left click here. Then we're going to select Open Image for here. Okay, so what we want to do is we want for our white lines to go into this luminance key. So we're just going to go from image to image. And this luminance key is what's going to make it so that these white lines make our image be revealed as the white lines go over it. Okay, in Blender, when you work in the node editor, think of things like this mix node. It's kind of like Photoshop or GIMP, but there's layers. Typically, if you're working in Photoshop or GIMP, layers work from top to bottom, where the top layer is the layer that's on top. With the mix node in Blender, it's opposite as far as the mix node. This bottom layer will be what's on top, and this top image, well, this bottom image will be on top, and this top image will be on the bottom. So what we want to do is come from the luminance key image. We want to click and drag and put this in the top image here. And that's how we drag these out. We just left click on image, and we'll pull this out here. Okay, so we can't see anything, and the reason why we can is we want to put a check mark next to backdrop. So now with backdrop, if I right click and pull, now we can sit there and see here is our white lines, and as I pull, you can actually see them animating out. And that's coming from this image node that has all of our 250 PNG images going into this. Okay, so this viewer is allowing us to see this, and we're gonna, from this image, we're gonna left click again from that image output and put this into our compositing node. So basically, this is all set up for what we need. So we have our two image nodes here, our luminance key here, our mix here, our composite, and our viewer, and this is pretty much all we need. Now what we need to do is look to our render button here. We have 1920 by 1080 resolution. That's good. Let's take this up to 100%. We want to make sure that we have this still set for PNGs, and it's set for PNGs by default, so that's good. And we're pretty much doing very similar to like we did before. This is set up fine. This RGBA is RGB with an alpha, so we'll have transparency for the background here. That's good as well. We'll click to change this to the new window, and now we'll click so we know where this is going. Very similar to like we did before. So I'm going to make another folder and name this PNG output 2. Press enter. Now left click on there. We'll click accept. There's no reason to really name it since it's going to be all PNGs. I'll go back to the beginning here. We double check. This is set up. Resolution's good. PNGs are set up. We know where this is going to. This is RGBA. Because if it was just RGB, this would not give you transparency, but it is. Everything looks good here. So now with everything looking good, what we're going to do is click animation. And now we can see our curve basically coming out and revealing our drawing underneath. Okay, now that's done rendering, and we actually can go to render right here, this render button, and then select play animation. And we should get a preview. There we go. So now we can see right here, everything drawn out. However, it looks strange because we have the transparent background. And that's what we're going to deal with next. Okay, let me click that to close out of there. Okay, in between I just did something and our image went away, so don't be alarmed by it not being there. We'll just put it at the end frame and it looks like it's just like before. So anyway, with this right here, we have our work here done inside of Blender. So what we can do is click File, New, and then reload Startup File. So here's a new Blender file. Currently we're in the default workspace. We want to click here and then go to the video editing workspace. So here we have our video editing workspace, which is ideal for video editing. Okay, what we want to do now is click Add Image. We want to go to the folder that has our PNGs. So this is our PNG output 2 folder. We're going to left click there, press A to select all of them, then select Add Image. We want to left click here, press G. We're going to move this up, left click. We want this to be right on frame 1. So with this selected, you can tell it's selected because it's highlighted white. I'm going to hold shift. While holding shift, I'm going to press S. So now our timeline, our strip that's of our PNGs is snapped right to our timeline indicator, which is on frame 1. So now we're going to drag this forward. We can see our animation there. I'm going to roll my mouse wheel to zoom in. Now what we're going to do is click Add, go to Effect Strip, and then select Color. So I left clicked on Color. So here's our color strip right here. Color strip is just a way of filling up this entire frame with color, which is extremely useful for what we're about to do here. We want to make this color be the same color as what's being drawn in with our lines here. So what we're going to do is we're going to click here, take this all the way up to white. Well, actually this doesn't matter. We want to click here and we want to select this color here. So we're going to left click. So now we should have the same color. We're going to click here to bring our timeline indicator all the way back to frame 1. We're going to left click here, hold shift. While holding shift, press S. And now we're going to click here and then press G and move this up to 250. So I can't see everything. So I'm going to roll my mouse with a zoom back, left click here again, press G, and then move this up to frame 250. Then left click to lock that in. I'm now going to click here. I'm going to right click to get my timeline indicator to move so we can see our image. And then what I'm going to do is go to blend. All right, I'm selected on here. We can't see this white color strip because currently this is set for cross. This needs to be set for alpha over. To do that, we're going to left click here and then select alpha over. So there we have now our drawing being on top of our color here. Okay, so I'm going to click back here. So let's click play and we can see our drawing being drawn out. Okay, so now that we have this, we're still not done. Now what we're going to do that we have this is, Let's what we're gonna do is we're gonna click here. We're gonna go to default. We're gonna take this up to 1920 by 1080p. Now we're gonna change this from PNG. We're gonna click here. We're gonna go to FFmpeg video. We're gonna left click here. We're gonna go to encoding. We're gonna scroll down where it says presets. We're gonna click here, change this to H264 in MPEG-4. Okay, now that we have that, we don't have sound, so this is fine. We need to pick where this is going to go. We're going to click here. We're going to click, well, not, you're going to click so you know wherever on your system you're going to click a place where you know where this is going. So I'm going to click here to make a new folder. I'm going to name this video output 1. Press enter. I'm going to name this Whiteboard animation 1. So I'll select accept. When you render out a video, you want to make sure that your video is matched up with your settings. So we're going to start at frame 1. We're going to end at frame 250. This is good because that's the length of our video is 250 frames. So with that done and with this picked out, we want to go up here, make sure that our resolution is correct. We're set for 100%. Everything looks good. I'm going to click here so that we render it in a new window. And then with all of that set up, we're going to click animation to render out our video. Okay, now our video is rendered out. We can click render and then play rendered animation. It should pop up. Okay, so now we have that. Now we want to make it look like a hand is actually drawing that out. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, we have what we need from the work we did here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to File, New, Reload Startup File. We're going to go to Display, Front. We're then going to go to View, Align View, and then Align Active Camera to View. So we're going to left click. So here's our camera right here. We have our cube selected on. We can tell it's selected on because it's highlighted orange. We're going to press X. Then we'll choose delete to delete that cube. If some of you out there are saying, why do you keep starting up Blender again when you have to do, set up some of the things? Long story short, to set up the things we're setting up are extremely quick. It tends to be easier to have a blank Blender file, I find, than to have issues from other Blender files. So the speed of going back to an already saved file compared to starting a new file when it only takes, I don't know, 10 seconds or more to start it up, I think you're better off starting up a new Blender file. But like I said, there's multiple ways of doing things in Blender. This is how I'm showing you to do this way. Anyway, I'm going to press all of us want to press. Let's press the N key to bring up the properties panel. We want to go down to backgrounds. We're going to click here, put a check mark next to background images. We're going to click this black arrow. We have this add image. We're going to click this by left clicking. We're then going to click open. We're then going to go to our video output. We're going to left click here. We're then going to left click here and then click open image. So when we did that, now we have these new options. We want to select, let me hover here, pull this out to the side. This says match movie length. And right now you can see this is before we press this. Now watch what happens when we press it. It's set for 250 frames. Everything should be, set up and ready for us to go. So now when we right click and drag our timeline indicator, we can see our drawing itself in. I'm going to click here to go back to frame 1 now. Okay, now that we have this set up, what we want to do is go to File, User Preferences, go to Add-ons, and you want to make sure that you have Import Images as Planes turned on. Here we go. See, it says import dash export colon import images as planes. Make sure you have a check mark next to this. Okay, I'm going to press N to take away that properties panel. What we need now is an image of a hand holding a pen. God gave us all hands, so we can either hopefully take a picture of it. You could draw a picture of your hand holding a pen. I went online, I looked for an image of a hand holding a pen, and I modified it in some GIMP. So that's what I'm about to bring in here now. Okay, so you need to have some kind of image of a hand holding a pen or a pen. Or at least that's what I would recommend anyway. So we have our 3D cursor here. In Blender, where the 3D cursor is at is where objects tend to come into Blender at. So when we bring this image in, it should come right to around here. So I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to hold Shift, press A. This brings up our Add To menu. I'm going to go to Images as Planes. I'm going to left click. And then I am going to go to these images here. When I click here, I can actually see my images. This is the image I want. I'm going to left click here. I'm going to scroll down. And I'm going to click on Shadeless. And what this will do is make it so, it being Blender, make it so that we're not dependent on light to see this. Just taking a quick look at my other options. So yeah, as long as you click Shadeless, everything else, all the other settings that are there by default are fine. So with that selected, we're going to click Import Images as Planes. Here's our image. We can't see that image yet because we need to click here and go to the Material tab. So now what we're going to do is press S to scale. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to take a look. Okay, I'm going to click front, and then I'm going to click here to go to, this is View Perspective / Ortho. So I'm going to click here to go to Orthographic View. Okay, now I'm going to right click and drag. All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to take this pen. I'm going to press S to scale to make this bigger. And I'm going to zoom in. So what we want to do is see where our image first starts. So right there. So we're on frame 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and put the pen right here. I'm then going to click here to go back to frame 1. Now what I'm going to do is see this little red circle button thing here. I'm going to click this. What this is this is called auto keyframing. Every time that we move our timeline and then move this, Blender will see the change. It will remember to change for us automatically. So pretty much what we're going to be doing is going 2 frames, move this image. 2 frames, move that image. And that's how we're going to make it look like this is actually drawing out the image that we already did the work on. Okay, so you can click here to move your frames, or you can use your keyboard. I'm going to use my keyboard. So I'm pressing 1, 2, and now I can see that this being our drawing move up there. So I'm just going to take my image and move it there. 1, 2, I pressed. Now I'm going to take this, move it here. 1, 2, and I'm basically just following the image. And when I move the timeline, Blender will remember. 1, 2. I couldn't see where it moved that time. Like that. This. And let's go here. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. I'm using my timeline indicator to move. 1, 2. So that this stays in control. When you use it, the timeline indicator, it tends to keep you from losing control of your animation. So I'm clicking here. 1, 2. Clicking here. Okay, so 1, 2. And you'll find, don't let it get to you that you're not like perfect as far as your movements. Because we're only moving 2 frames, you'll find that surprisingly, actually was surprised, it looks pretty good being fairly close. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. And 1, 2. When I'm doing that, basically, let me right click. When you right click, you'll if you're clicking, you right click, you'll kind of like reverse what you were doing. Like it's a almost like undoing. 1, 2. And 1, 2 is just me pushing 2 frames forward on my keyboard. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. By the way, Blender, like sometimes you'll see me like tracing the path. Blender sees where I stop at. It doesn't see the other movements, which is fine. Actually, like I said, I was surprised. If you move in, as long as you move in a general direction, it works out pretty well. And the reason why I'm able to move without inserting a keyframe every time is because of this auto framing button being turned on. And so if you go 1, 2 and you're not sure exactly where you went, you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be perfect. And you should see that shortly. 1, 2. If you're not sure how your lines move, just move your pen or your hand with the pen. And as long as there's some movement, because this is relatively quick movement, so the main thing that you see is just that the hand is moving, and if it's in a general direction, it for the most part. Obviously, if you, depending on how much time you take, you're going to get better results. So, I mean, you could make it perfectly match up. Oh, I see. Okay. And it actually kind of helps the hand blocking things. It makes it more difficult and kind of helps because it. And what you can do is you can go back and take a look and see. So you can make small corrections. So now I'm back on the last frame that I worked on. If you go across, I recommend you go, either down and up instead of just going across. So here, for that line, I'm actually going to go back a keyframe because I think that line is, kind of more obvious than other things. So there, instead of pressing 1, 2, I just pressed 1. So you can do that, you know, for more detail. Instead of doing 1, 2, you can just press 1 and then see where it went that time. I'm just going to move back down here. And see where it went. There we go. I saw the N right there. Okay, now over here. And yes, you can go back and make, you know, changes. So right click. Sometimes I don't grab the manipulator, right? So I grab just here. And when you do that, you want to be moving on an X and Y axis. You don't want to be using Z. You don't want to be going forward and backward. So that's why you might hear me say right click. See, I just did it there. So now I just right click and go back. So I'm on the that I'm only moving up and down and not in and out of space. This is kind of tedious, but also kind of fun. Not sure where it went. It being basically our drawing path. I think it went up here somewhere. Up, down there. There it goes. Back up here. Over here. You can, like I said, you can go back. So. Just click the bag instead of clicking the manipulator. There we go. Let's see, let me take it back and see how this is looking. Sometimes you can, like, see there, the eyes went there. So what I'll do is I'll move this up around the eyes now. Now I'm just clicking to see, catching up to where we were at. Okay, so now we're back to where we still need to work. Okay, there it goes, the arm. I was like, what happened? Here. The hand. And basically it's still doing the same thing, you know, 2, 2. Show here. Here. In Blender, there's so many different ways to do things. This is my particular way. When I was doing this, I thought about doing more advanced techniques. Then I tried this. I wasn't sure how it was going to work, and I was pleased with the result. So here we go. Oh, I can't see. So I'll just move the pen. Couldn't see where it went. There we go. Let's see it there. And here. here. I'm pretty sure it went here. Back up here. Over here. Here. Tedious but strangely kind of fun. I don't know. So you think this is fun? I think Blender in general is fun. It's Blender. You know. Oh, I didn't see. Oh, over there. Okay. There's times where, you know, things get definitely technical and very difficult, but generally I think that Blender is fun, especially when you break past things. And the things that are difficult, when you figure them out, there's a certain amount of pleasure in, oh, there we go. Just, you know, figuring out something that was difficult to figure out. Cannot see, so I'm just going to move. Cannot see. Oh, I'm on frame 250. Not yet. So I'll move down here. Okay, I'm on frame 250 now. Okay, we made it through 250 frames. Let's turn this off. So this is the auto keyframe button we just turned off. We'll click here to go back. Let's click, what we can do is press N key to bring up our properties panel. Let's click on display. See where it says only render? I'll put a check mark here. Then that takes away, you know, everything other than render with the exception of our manipulator. And then I can click here and take that away. So I'll press the N key again. Let's click play and see. See what I mean? Just the movements, you know, I think it looks good. And like I said, you could go back and you could do more. You could go back and make your curves go a little bit closer just by going frame by frame instead of 2 frames like we were going. But I think the result is, you know, generally good. Obviously, like I said before, the more time you spend, the better results you can get. Okay, now we need to bring our actual video in. So our 3D cursors here, where our 3D cursors at is where objects tend to come into Blender at. We're going to hold Shift, press A. We're going to go to Mesh, Images as Planes. We're going to go to where our video is at. So here's our video. We're going to click there. We're going to select Shadeless. We're then going to select Import Images as Planes. We're going to press the N key to bring up our Properties panel. We're going to scroll down. See right here for our background. Currently it's set for back. We want to make this move to the front of our image right here. Okay, the reason why we're doing that is so that we can scale this up and make sure this matches up with this image, since our hand is going according to the image. So with our video selected, we're going to press S to scale, left click, S to scale. And then left click, and that looks pretty good. When you're pressing scale to scale up, if you hold the Shift key, you'll get even a finer scale. Okay. Okay, now we don't need this background image anymore, so we'll click here. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to take a look. We want to click this auto keyframe and turn this off. We're going to click on our main video file and take this back, something like that. We have one keyframe on this video file. We can get that off by clicking here, going to our animation workspace. Be very, very careful. These are, I want to just get off the keyframe. It's only one keyframe for this. Make sure that you click this button right here. And this button right here will take off the keyframes only for what we have selected. If you do not push this button, you will lose all of the keyframes for everything, including all the keyframes we put on your hand. So with that selected, we'll press A to select everything. We'll press X. We'll, that brings up our delete menu. We'll select delete keyframes. We'll left click here, go back to default. Let's click on our hand and make sure our animation's still on there, and it is. Very good. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to click view camera. Our camera view is showing this gray. We don't want that, so we're going to click here to go to camera view. We're going to click here. We're going to go to this focal length. This lets us actually zoom in the camera. So the camera lens is zooming in. The camera's not moving. None of our objects are moving. The camera lens is zooming. So we're going to click here. We're going to enter in 5, 0, press enter. So now our entire camera view is filled up. We're going to press N to take away our properties panel. Okay, what we're going to do now is click here to go to our render button. We're going to click here and then select new window. We're going to take this up to 100%. We're going to go to PNG. We're going to change this to FFmpeg video. We're going to go to encoding. We're going to go to presets. We're going to change this to H.264 in MP4. We're going to scroll down. We don't have sound. If we did, we would probably change this to MP3. We now need to make sure we know where this is going. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click here, go to a place where we know this is going to, where it's going to. I'm going to name this last video output. I want to name this last whiteboard animation. We're going to select accept. New window. So yeah, new window. This is good. This is good. This is good. I take this back to frame 1. Let's go all the way up to the top, and then let's click animation. Okay, so now that's rendered out, so we can click here. Now when I click there, we'll be able to watch the video of this. However, the video file should be in the folder that you set up to have the video exported to. So I'm going to click render and then play rendered animation. We should be able to watch this file right here in Blender. So here we go. Okay, I think it's a decent result. The more time you put in, the more, typically the better result you'll get. I suspect that if we didn't lift up our pen as much when we were drawing our white lines, that the, I can't remember if I went back, I guess I went back and forth between the faces and the whiteboard, but if you put more time in, I mean, you really can have it be precise. However, I do like the look. I like the fact that your image is already there, so you know that your image is going to look good because it's already there. So I like the technique. I'd be interested to see if any of you who are watching this video use this and what kind of results you get with this. And I hope you like this video. I hope that you learned something from this. Okay, guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and reshare them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel and you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.